Hi, everyone. It's Marilyn Alori, and welcome to Who Can It Be Now? Today, I have a very special guest, Adina Badea. You know what? I never asked how you say your last name.
It's Bada.
Bada. Adina Bada. Adina, I've known you for how long do you think now?
Oof, I want to say 2017,
I thought you were going to say
20,
20 years. I'm like, girl, I haven't been doing this for that
no,
long. It's almost
since
20
since
years.
2017, 2016, 2017, something like
20,
that.
2016, 2017. And she's been in a few of my programs, Membership for Your Soul. She's done a mastermind with me. And now she's in Next Level Living. And the reason why I wanted to interview Adina is because she's a scientist. And I'm fascinated with science and scientists and their take on life. And I've been researching it myself. Obviously, I'm not Adina, who is a scientist. So I just wanted to, I was so curious and I wanted to interview her with all of you to just find out like why a scientist would also go into the metaphysical. Like, what is the draw for her? And what is she learning from both sides of the table, which really there's a lot of, I think, crossover, but she'll tell you more than me. And I thought that this would be a really great conversation for all of us, especially in Next Level Living right now. We're dealing a lot more with atmosphere stuff, like going out into the past the universe, into atmosphere, soul atmosphere, different types of energies. And Adina always comes in with different types of things that she knows as a scientist. And we're like, it's very, very fascinating. So welcome, Adina.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you. Thank you.
So
Um,
give us a little bit of background about like where you're from and how you decided to do science, like what kind of scientist you are.
right. So my science has been adapting as I go. So I'm originally from Romania, and when I was little and through I want to say mid high school, I was very passionate about math. So I was a little mathematician. And even back then, um, I had this, the answers would just come to me. Um, I worked really hard as well, but I had this connection to math. It just makes sense. It clicked in a way that wasn't necessarily proportional, or at least to a certain extent, wasn't necessarily proportional to the amount of work. There was a level of inspiration that came for me with math. And I have this memory, very distinct memory. I used to participate in local math competitions. Um, and there was this instance this year where I was at the end of the exam and I had all of the answers except for one. There was this one last one that was escaping me. It was probably the most hard question of them all. Um, and I felt like it was there and I just wasn't grasping it. And there were only three kids left in the room, and there were these two girls. One of them was in front of me seated and the other one was behind. And then one of them told me, "Hey, can you pass this pen next to the girl behind you?" And then I looked at the pen and there was a little paper stuck in there, probably the solution to the problem, right? And as I passed it, I didn't want to be a jerk, right? Or maybe I wouldn't have been a jerk, but I got so angry. It's like, they're cheating, like one of them knows and the other one doesn't, but both of them are going to get points. Um, and I don't know, that focused me, and I got it. It just clicked. The answer clicked. And so I got the answer right before the timer went buzz, give your answers now. And the three of us were the only ones with the maximum points at that competition.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and it
Why do
was
you
just
think it clicked at that point?
focus. I think it was one of those things where emotion focuses for me. Emotion focuses, I guess, channeling, because I didn't know that that's what I was doing, but that's what I did in that instance, right? I channeled the answer, and for me, in that moment, I think it was, I don't know, fairness. This kind of fuzzy concept of fairness. It's like it's not fair that, okay, one of them is smart, but the other one not quite as, or not didn't get the answer, didn't get there by herself, and she's still going to get it. Um, And so I honestly, I'm still, through my work with you, I'm still trying to discover the best ways to get, or the clearest way, the easiest way for me to get that clear channeling. What are the tools to get the channeling to go as smoothly as possible?
So I want to ask you about that, but before we ask you about that, so you became your PhD. What is your main focus in science as of today?
Yeah, so in high school, I got attracted to chemistry. And for me, it was my road in science was always dictated by following what I find interesting. And if doors closed, and for math, the door is kind of closed because it's here. I see it here too in the US too. There's a certain um misogyny, right? Perception that girls can't do math, that permeates the schooling system a lot of the times. And so in high school, um, I got stopped by a couple of math teachers that were not very open to coaching girls as the way they did boys. And so I was old enough at the time to realize that it's not me, right? But it also didn't feel like a battle worth fighting for because I found chemistry. So it was one of those things where a door closes, but another door opens. So my chemistry teacher was very much empowering and encouraging. Um, and it was almost kind of like a new world where I could use the same type of skills and to um, channel my thirst for knowledge, my thirst for piercing through the unknown, because that's ultimately what draws me to science. And I stuck to chemistry for a very long time through my PhD. And in my PhD, which is where I met you, I was beginning to lose a little bit of that steam. I think it's not only chemistry specific, but I think a lot of sciences can get um, really bogged into the details of a specific project, especially when you get to the PhD level. Your project is kind of this really narrow thing that you are focusing on, and you're trying to advance human knowledge, but in this very specific, small yet big at the same time piece. And if you are aligned with your advisor, if you happen to find the advisor that looks at the same question that draws the best out of you, or that draws the most interest out of you, then that's great. But a lot that doesn't happen for everyone during their PhD, and that's where I see a lot of people lose their passion. And for me, I had to essentially block information from the outside and focus on discrete signals and on symbolism. And a lot of that came from watching what you were doing. So I discovered you on one of Jennifer McLean's predictions. And I liked you. I liked what you did. I liked how you went about things. You had a different sound from everybody else, and so it's like I kind of like how she sounds. I like how she talks. I like how she approaches these things. And then I just, from tool to tool, I found that it just clicked for me, that I believed the system. I believed that the tools would work, and I saw that they worked for me. And that helped me wade through a lot of uncertainty, through a lot of options. Part of the reason why I feel inspiration is so important in science is because you have so many things that you could look into, so many problems that you can fix, so many questions that you could answer. And how do you know the one that is the most worth your time or your life on this earth? And for that, you need a little bit more than just a systematic approach of, well, I have 300 questions that I could look at, and if I spend 30 minutes looking at each of these to decide what the best 100 are, and then the best 50, and then that's just a lot. That's just a lot of time.
Yeah.
And so a lot of even in your PhD, a lot of people say, "Oh, luck still plays a big role in how successful people are during their PhDs." And I feel like just saying luck is very disempowering,
Mhm.
right? It's almost like they acknowledge, right? They acknowledge that there's more than just taking a systematic approach to science in order to succeed, in order to find something truly valuable. And I think people talk about inspiration in science all the time, but nobody really says what it is, right?
Okay. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. First question is, this is great. Um, you must have had moments of like metaphysical or symbols before you like went on to, and you heard me on Jennifer McLean's thing. So what was one of those moments where you felt like there was something else outside of systematic approaches?
Right. Um, the moment that I talked to about that competition, that's when I realized that that was one of them, when I realized that um I didn't know, right? There was none of the problems that I had practiced with up until that point were that problem, right? I didn't know, I didn't have direct access to that solution. That's not something that I remembered. That's something that I got by putting two and two together. And that's also that essentially that taught me that I need to ask. I need to ask, and I ask and you shall receive. That was one of the moments. And
Did you know
then
who you're asking though? Like, are you asking God? Are you asking the universe? Are you asking energy? Who are you asking?
I don't know that I don't know that I knew at the time who I was asking. I have been raised in a religious, somewhat religious household, so we believe in God.
Right.
Um, not very intensely, or like they're not, my family is not very prone to following rituals. They I think they did at some point, but it's more of a culturally acceptable um
Practice.
not yeah, practice of religion, not define, it doesn't define any of them. They don't, being Christian, because that's what we are, that being Christian doesn't necessarily define who they are, but it
There was
is
freedom
very
in
much,
that.
yes.
Okay.
And so that helped me. But I have to say that at that moment, think I didn't think necessarily that I was asking God for a
Mhm.
solution. Um, it was more of I just, yes, out in the universe, like I need the answer now, and then here it was.
Yeah, but you
Uh,
trusted that you would get the answer or something. Did you have a trust for that? Or it was just that moment it proved that there was a trust that you could ask and something would come through?
it proved to me that I need to do more than just, because right, that this exam was long. I want to say it was 2 or 3 hours. So for 2 or 3 hours, I had um drawn on my usual resources, right? Like what I remember, what I could
Right.
deduce from a plus, like 1 + 1 is 2, and so on. Um, but in that moment, it proved to me that I need to do a little more than that. I need to go beyond the deduction skills that I had trained up until that point. Um, there was something about the time pressure too, and I still have a complicated, I always call it a complicated relationship to deadlines. I don't like them, but I need them. I feel like without deadlines, things don't get done.
Yeah. Remember you
um,
saying,
um, but at that point, I felt that I needed something bigger than myself. Um, that wouldn't come to me unless I asked for it. And so
so from that
it
moment
didn't,
forward, were you continuing to do that then, to trust that there was something outside the deductions and the education?
yes. But it mostly, I didn't have I didn't consciously do it like that. I had a what people would say is what people would call an unreasonable faith in myself.
Mhm.
Um, so I decided pretty late in high school that I wanted to apply to US colleges and universities and go to the US for, or come to the US because I'm here now, for college, because I was interested in research. And there weren't that many opportunities in Romania at that point. Um, and everybody told me that I started the process too late and that I would have to wait a year or two in order to make it happen. And that was just something that I didn't want to do. I still don't want, I don't like wasting time. It's like, well, it feels like the only reason you don't think that I can do it is because from your experience, everybody takes X months, and I am too late for that in the game. But I think I can do it in fewer months. And so I actually said no to um, a lot of people who offered to coach me or mentor me because they came with these conditions of, oh, well, I'll take you, but you have to spend a year because that's how really you know that you will absolutely get in. And I I didn't agree with that. And I wasn't necessarily successful from the very beginning. I took the SATs, and I think some of them I had to take a couple of times because the first time I didn't score as high as I would have liked, or as high as people said that they needed to be. But I gave myself the extra chance. My parents wanted me to stay and do med school at home or pharmacy. And so for a while, I was burning the candle at both ends by also following my passion of coming to the US, but also spending time into the backup, the backup option. And at some point, I had to tell them, no, this is going to work. I, but it's not going to work if I keep dividing myself in two.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
have to choose. I have to go with this. I have to believe that it's going to work. And I didn't have a doubt. I think I never, up until I started working, um, and paying more attention with these tools and with you, I don't know that I knew necessarily that I was tapping into something else when I had this faith in myself. But I never let the past define what I can do
Mm.
in the now and in the future. I never allowed the past um, to prevent me from having faith in my success just because I haven't tried it before or because others have tried and they failed. Um,
That's
and it was great. And then I have to say that then I got to college and then grad school, and some of that went away. Social conditioning is really something. Social conditioning is really something. And when you go somewhere, and I mean it's competitive environments, and everybody tells you in order to beat the competition, you have to be XYZ. And if you're not, then you don't fit here, or you don't look like someone who's going to be successful, or you haven't gone through all the steps in order to be successful. Um, and I lost some of that momentum. But I have to say that again, by and I had some friends too. I had some, now I'm beginning to realize, some people who were placed very, very opportunely. So when I was at my lowest, there was this something that a person said, and I'm not even, I was thinking back on it, it's like I'm not even in contact with them anymore. They weren't really a longtime friend, and they didn't stick around for too long, but they were there to give me exactly the words that I needed when I was about to let the system tell me that I should abandon ship or something. Uh, and then I switched tracks, and I ended up bumping into something that I'm now in. I'm in the clinical space. I'm still a chemist, but I use my chemistry knowledge for patient care. And I did notice in grad school that I was a little bit more of a people person. I liked people. I liked to impact people. more than my colleagues. I didn't really consider it weird at the time, but then when you start feeling like the only one, it's like, oh, maybe there's something to lean into here. And there are certain points when you're in a training program of any kind, they tend to be very formulaic, right? They're structured and they define success in a specific way, and you need to hit all of the benchmarks in
follow
order
the
to
track and everything.
right. And there were certain points when you hit all the benchmarks and you look at the future, it's like, okay, but I mean, I hit all the benchmarks, and then from here I only have one or two options, and I don't like either of those options. So what do I do, right? And I don't think a lot of people are like that, and a lot of people who find their way out of that don't realize that what they're doing is leaning into inspiration. And so for me, I started talking to a bunch of people. And honestly, a lot of these people did not have they didn't have similar backgrounds to mine, but I didn't know that that's what I was doing. But I was listening. It was symbols, so they would say certain words that sparked interest. And when I started listening, I think I had joined your membership, or you had your free group before membership, which I don't remember the name of, but I was part of that. And I was going to interviews, and I was looking for symbols and messages in flowers, in butterflies, in insects, in animals, as I was going to all my interviews. And I didn't choose the interview that best matched my background. I chose the interview where I got the best vibe, or the location where I got the best vibe from the place, from the people. And it's it's hard to define the vibe that you get from people, but that's what I followed. And I never regretted it. I never regretted the way I chose. So,
All right. So I love that. So I have a question for you, because you've said this word a few times. How do you define inspiration? Because you keep using the word inspiration. How do you define it? What is inspiration to you?
to me, inspiration is connection to source, and also making a connection to source, but also making connections between Earth and beyond, right? Between our space, our 3D space, and higher spheres, higher spirit, between what is made manifest and ideas. And that's something that this type of connection, bringing ideas into a solid form is what I feel material science is. Not all of science is materialistic, I know. I know a lot of science thinks there's theoretical science like math, theoretical physics, theoretical chemistry, but I was always more attracted to the science that leaves you with something material at the end. And so inspiration to me is when you have 1,000 options, one of them just lights up. And the reason it lights up is not anything that your mind could come up with. So beyond cognition or cognitive intelligence. That is how I define inspiration.
I love that. When you have inspiration, I love that, what you just said. So now I have another question for you, because now I'm going to go into some of these. It's interesting how you use symbols and how you're allowing it to inform you in your work. Are you still doing that today as you're working? Are you still allowing the work that we're doing? How are you allowing it to inform your work?
I think I do it now more than ever before, because since I am involved in decisions that impact patient care, I need to be fast. And so a lot of the times when you're presented with a situation, and I logically think, okay, it could be this, or this. And the order you still need to prove or disprove them, but the order you take them to investigate the differentials, for instance, so the specific causes for a patient's presentation, is very important, because if the first one that you look at is right, is correct, they can start treating, whereas I investigate the other options as well. And so it's very important for me to know if one of the options feels truer than the others, and investigate that first. And of course, we'll do our due diligence and investigate all of them, but if you get a hit the first time, they can start using that right away. And by they, I mean frontline
Right.
healthcare workers.
Do you think more people use that, Adina, than actually recognize that that's what they're doing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I was looking into these things, I was trying to define whether I'm still interested in my line of science. And I was reading a lot about um professional they call it professional intuition, like chemical intuition. So people who have and they usually talked about it in the context of people who have spent their entire lives working in that field. So people with a lot of experience. They were saying how um, because their brain already has access to so much information that they've amassed throughout their professional experience, they don't actually have time to think about, when they are presented with a problem. They don't consciously dig into their memories and to extract the right information and say it's this. Their brain actually does it. It's almost like a reflex. It does it a lot faster. And so they call that professional intuition, but they still attribute it to the brain. So, right. And they say that the brain makes shortcuts that you are not aware of in order to reach the right conclusion faster, based on how much experience you have. And I think that makes sense when you talk about people who have been in the field for 40 years, but I have seen people be very intuitive. They're way too young for that theory to necessarily apply to them. I'm not a cognitive scientist, though, so maybe they can tell me that I'm wrong.
Wait, so what do you think the brain is?
Scientifically?
It's a good question, right? I don't know. I want to know how you would answer that. I've never even asked myself that.
I mean, the brain is definitely an organ, that's for sure. Um, and I love to be fair, though, I love the brain because we don't really understand it very well. Cognitive science is very interesting, and neuroscience. I think they have one of the highest rates of discovery among all the sciences that I've been dabbling into. As with a lot of things, I think that the physical presence of said organ, in this case the brain, people tend to, with scientists, right, tend to attribute all of the capacities of the mind to the physical organ of the brain, right, to how cells work and how cells connect to each other and how quickly they can transfer an electrical impulse from one cell to another. But that's all, I mean, that's all we know, right? We don't know of anything beyond that. And a lot of the times, a lot of what I see us do, and a lot of what people are capable of doing in terms of creativity, feels like it extends well beyond the physical system of nerve cells interacting with each other. So I think that we think of the mind, or when we speak of the mind, a lot of us think about it as attached to our brain, right? You can't have the mind without the brain, or at least that's what we think, right? But in terms of what knowledge is, and whether inspiration pertains to the mind or not, I think inspiration is your connection to spheres beyond the mind. And I have to say that I'm always looking. I'm always looking into the most recent discoveries in neuroscience or in cognitive science, and I'm always looking to see if there's anything out there that has extended a little bit beyond this 3D. Sometimes I even find it 2D um, view of what the brain is and what it does. It definitely is. We are physical conduits for everything, and so it definitely does need the health of the organ itself in order to work. As cognitive decline and mental health is always very very sad to see. When you witness it, it does feel like in a way that parts of that person are missing, or that person, or the parts of that person are going away. And so the physical definitely has a role, but I think we can learn to transcend that. And I really would like a little bit more of that, to be visible, to be researched, or at least to be a little more visible in how scientific questions get formulated. And I think I've seen a lot of scientists who maybe after they retire from their career in science, step aside, and then they start either talking or writing about the metaphysical. I don't know that it's very accepted in many sciences. So it's one of those things where if you want to keep working in science, and if you want to still do your research, resources related to research are also right. They kind of belong to the system, right? So if you want to use their resources to answer questions, the questions need to be formulated in a way that's accepted by the field. I've found myself a little happier with my role in the system when I apply it to patient health, because it feels much more true. It feels much more consistent with my values. I've, at least for now, I've stopped asking questions that pierce the fabric of what we understand from a metaphysical point of view, right? For me now, it's more applied. It's how can we improve patient care? How can we improve the tools that we have in order to care for our patients? And a lot of the times it's how can we figure out mechanisms of patient presentation as they relate to, in my case, as they relate to environmental toxins. And that's not as, how should I say, it's not as esoteric, right, for science. So I still leave my mark, my positive my positive impact on people, even though I don't, and I don't have to shatter any overall vision of what science is in the process.
I love that. Thank you. So I have a how did we get here? What's your belief system about how humans incarnated on the earth?
Oh wow, how did we get here? We as in humans.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Whew.
And I understand, like, as we're recording this, this is what you're going to answer today. And this may shift or change with the knowledge and the wisdom that you gather as you move forward. So I just want to put that out there because you're a scientist. You're going to keep growing and understanding. But go ahead. I know I never told Adina these are the questions I'm asking her. So,
no,
so
but
just
I
go
should have
along with
known. I should have known.
it.
Hmm.
Well, what do you believe to be true for right now? And if you
Right.
can't answer it, it's totally fine because I
No,
want.
that's fine. I'm going to take a stab at it. So I I have always, well, I shouldn't say I have always believed. I have come to believe in a way that we are kind of on a school. Our life on Earth is school Earth.
Mm,
And I do believe we graduate to something bigger and better. I don't have the name of the book right now. I used to read a lot of sci-fi books, and maybe I still would if I had some more time, but
mm,
free time has dwindled. So, but when I do, I like to listen to sci-fi books or read sci-fi books and look at sci-fi movies, mostly because I'm really, really fascinated by space. Um, and these big energies that are planets and stars and space in general. I don't think it's empty. It would be such
mhm.
such a waste of space
Mhm,
if it
yeah.
were empty, right? Um, and so as I've never felt that we were alone. Even as a little kid, I never felt that we were alone. When people say, "Oh, do aliens exist?" Absolutely. Don't think we're alone. It would be so sad. It would be so sad. And it doesn't ring true.
Mhm.
Um, but I also wondered, and I speak to scientists about this, and it's especially older scientists. They have this regret that they've spent all of their lives researching something, and they come to the end of their lives and they don't know if they were not that they were right, but they haven't figured it out. They don't know what it's all about. And I
Mm,
try to tell them, it's like, well, I think you will. I think it doesn't end, right? It doesn't end when you die. So just to get back to your question, I think we are here to hone our powers, so to speak, right? Our powers of manipulating energy. So you learn that you have control over manifesting. You learn that your words and your thoughts and your feelings have power. And you do so on a smaller scale, right? If I say I want to make something, it's going to take time and effort and physical resources. But maybe once we graduate from school Earth, you think something and it instantly happens, or you think something and planets start moving, right? Um, there was a model in one of the books, and I do not remember which one it is. I'll probably go back to it and let you know. Where people find ways to sort of make clones of themselves, and then those clones, their lives their experiences get uploaded into the primary person who then lives longer. And so then you have your small versions of yourself who live, say, 100 years, and they have experiences. and then all of their experiences become part of your knowledge, and then the big version of yourself lives 2,000 years, and the 2,000 years version of you doesn't have the same goals and concerns as the 100-year version of you. The 2,000-year version of you builds worlds, right? And you interact with other 2,000 years versions of other people. And so that model gave me I really, that model appealed to me, not in the clone sense of the word, but more in the, you are it, just like with a school system in a way. You grow your powers, your awareness of who you are and what you can do in a small setting, and then as you move on, I would love to think that we move to outer space. And I don't know that we necessarily get assigned a planet or a celestial body or a star. But at that point, our will, our way to, and I say will for the lack of a better reason, our way to manipulate energy actually has bigger effects. Maybe we get to communicate with people who are on Earth and inspire them to weave inspiration back into our conversation. And in terms of how, so that's I'm answering your question of how we got there with where we're going.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
And so in terms of how we got here, I do believe that the fact that we are here is the will of multiple energies higher than ourselves, whether there are right beings that were once on Earth, who knows how many years, centuries ago, and now they know, okay, now Earth needs this, and this will come through Adina or through Marilyn, right?
I love that. I love that. I love the clones too. I think it's fascinating. All right. So the last question, there was more I wanted to ask you, but we'll possibly do another one. What are you hoping to do with what you're learning as you continue to learn? Because we're learning, it's interesting. I didn't know, like, I'm very interested in space too. And obviously you are too, and playing with time and everything like that. But with everything that you're gathering, everything you're learning on an intuitive metaphysical level, as well as on a physical level, educational and what you're reading, what are you hoping to do with this information?
That's a very good question. And it's I don't know if every scientist is like this, but I think at least at a certain point, even if that was in infancy, every scientist hopes to discover something, and many people talk about it in different ways. Some people say, oh, win the Nobel Prize. But you win the Nobel Prize because you discovered something, right? I mean, it's not the prize. It's I think it's not the prize. I think it's the act of discovery. Or, oh yeah, they want their name in a book. Well, yeah, your name is in a book because you discovered something, right? It's not because of, and I don't think people are actually looking for the accolades. They want to be the kind of person, so to have that kind of impact that then would naturally generate accolades. And so it's, like I said, there are very many questions that one could be asking and setting to find the answer to. And so I am constantly looking for that, to further hone in on what is my piece, what is really the specific area which will likely end up being very focused, as it does, as it normally does in science. That specific area that would benefit me, from me being the person asking the question and working towards it. And I have been, every time you set on with a project, it's like, this is it. And then at some point it's like, this is not it. And usually when the no, maybe this is not it comes in, that's when the question is, okay, so then if it's not this, what is it? And at that time, in the moment in time where you are, all of your experiences have led you to a point where you have a number of choices. And the best choice, I always strive to make the best choice based on all of the tools that I have. But yes, it is the one that ends up feeling like the best one, right? And contributing to that feeling are a bunch of things that we talk about in Next Level Living. And honing in on how to feel for that is what we talk a lot about in NLL. And I'm looking forward to it because I have been having more and more faith in my journey, and the path that I took to get here, thanks to a lot of our tools and thanks to the trust in the process, trust in our team, our celestial team, because we're never alone. And my goal is to just keep going unwaveringly so, and of course say no to distractions because there are so many. So many.
Thank you. I just want to thank you so much, Adina. And I want to just highlight something you said that I think is so important is just continuing to say yes. Having that unwavering belief that if it's not this thing right now, this thing brought you to the next thing of where you're going to find what you need to find. And I see so many people, and I know you do too, that give up because maybe that wasn't the thing. And instead of thinking like I chose wrong or I did this or did that, instead just seeing it as a piece of information, a piece of the experience, and then moving forward. I think it's so important to have that mindset to move forward.
I agree.
Yeah. Because I mean, sorry, what'd you say, Annie?
I was just going to say that's where not letting anybody else tell you what
Yeah.
success is very important.
I agree. That's so important. And every day I was saying this to somebody because I was talking to somebody who's older than me, and I was like, yeah, but every day is a new beginning. Like you have to look at every day. Your life isn't over because you're in your 70s or, and they want to argue with me that I'm not that age yet. And I'm like, well, I'm just trusting that with all I'm doing, that I'm always going to see it as a new beginning, new beginning, new beginning. It's not like starting over. It's just, what am I going to discover today? And it sounds to me a lot like you live your life like that as well.
Yes, and it's not easy, but it gets easier when you have the right tools and the right people around you.
Yeah.
It gets easier, and it gets more natural when you see so many people go through that too and succeed through it.
Yes, true. Thank you so much, Adina. Is there anything else you want to end with? As we end, we've got to close out, but is there anything else you want to say? And it's not about me, it's anything you want to say.
I was just, how I was telling you that I don't have names of any of the books or the shows on me right now, but I did remember one. And that was and I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but it was the OA, the
Oh,
first
yes.
season. Yes,
It's not. I think they only did 2 seasons and I think they stopped, but go ahead. I know, it was so
there
good.
was this character who was very gray, if not dark gray, who was studying death, right?
Mhm.
He and at some point he recorded the sound of what he attributed to the soul leaving the body, and while the soul was out of the body. And he also managed to somehow coin that sound to the sound that you can hear in the rings of Saturn. So the soul was traveling out in space, um, before it came back, because these were near-death experiences. So that was one of the things about that show that I absolutely liked, the love that it connected where we go after this to space. And I sure hope that's true, because that would be very exciting.
Yes. And none of us really know, and that's why we're here.
Right.
Trying to figure it out. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Adina. And thank you, everyone. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe. And in order to rate and review, especially on Apple Podcast, you have to go to the show and not to the episode, go to the show and then go down and you'll see the little stars and you can leave me a review and also share with all your friends. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day or evening whenever you're listening to this. And that is all. Thanks a lot.